So let me start here. I'll read this official boilerplate, and then we can return to Mr. Windmiller's interesting subject and other subjects. Okay, so in accordance with Governor Baker's executive order permitting virtual meetings during the COVID pandemic, the Cemetery Committee is conducting this public meeting today, May 5th, 2021, 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Zoom platform in accordance with the town's policy directive and guidelines issued on April 1, 2020 and amended on May 7. This meeting has been properly noticed with the town clerk. I ask that all Cemetery Committee members, town staff, and presenters activate their video and mute their mics unless they have something to say or are participating in committee dialogue. For members of the public, when I open the meeting to public comment, please unmute yourself or raise your hand by hitting *9 on your phone or select raise your hand option by your name in the list of participants. If you're recognized, please state your name and address. This meeting is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on the town's website. I hereby call this meeting to order. All committee votes will be taken via roll call. We'll start with an attendance roll call of all committee members. When I announce your name, please reply present. Andrea Solomon.
Present.
Jerry Susi.
Here.
Leo Carroll.
Here.
Brian Davidson.
Present.
And I'm Paul Cook. All right. This meeting is being video recorded. Deed signing. Thank you, Andrea, for signing these things every week, every month. The next proposed meeting of the Cemetery Committee is June 2nd. Does that work for everyone? Good, great. The approval of the minutes. We have 2 months worth of minutes to approve. First, the one from March 3rd, 2021. I presume everyone's read them. Do we have a motion to adopt the minutes from March 3rd?
I'll move to adopt the March 3rd minutes.
Brian Davidson moves to adopt. A second.
I'll second.
Andrea seconds. Andrea Solomon seconds. All in favor? Let's go through the thing here. I'm in favor. Andrea?
Aye.
Jerry Susi?
Aye.
Leo Carroll?
Aye.
And Brian Davidson.
Aye.
Okay, so the March 2021 meeting minutes are hereby adopted. Now we go to the April 7th meeting minutes. I move that we adopt them. Do we have a second?
Second.
Who is that? Brian Davidson seconds?
Yep.
Paul Cook votes yes. Andrew Solomon?
Yes.
Jerry Susi?
Yes.
Leo Carroll?
Yes.
Brian Davidson?
Yes.
Okay, so the April 7, 2021 minutes are adopted. Chair comments. Great to see you all. Thank you for your patience with the incompetence of the chair. And I haven't anything to say. I may have a few things to say at the end, but I'm done for now. Except I want to say I certainly appreciate Aaron and all the hard work he's doing with trying to remedy the work of the beavers. The beavers have been causing Concord some trouble, as I understand it. Those rascals. All right, D2, Concord Public Works Staff Report, Operations and Maintenance Update. Mr. McCloskey, take it away.
Thank you, Paul. Good evening, everyone. Aaron McCloskey, Highway and Ground Superintendent. So during the month of April in Sleepy Hollow, we had 1 full grave entombment, 5 cremations. And then as far as lot sales go, we had 10 single grave lots that were sold in the month of April so far. And I'll let Tish give an update on kind of spring maintenance activities and where we stand.
Einstein's is almost done with leaves. They've got another section that they're going to do some touch up in. They haven't been able to come back this week because of the rain, and it's a hill. They don't want to slide on it. And they will start mowing probably at the same time, so probably tomorrow.
And
Most of the loaming is done. There's still some plow damage to fix, but all the winter graves are filled in and seeded.
Pretty busy up there for the last month. So we did have one winter weather event in April. The last snow of the season here came through kind of late. It was a little bit more than expected, but Other than that, we've had a lot of visitors come through the cemetery. It's been a very busy place. So look forward to seeing more people come and visit as the season and weather start to improve. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. All right, let's move on to D3, presentation on Blanding's turtles, Brian Windmiller. Thank you for coming, Mr. Windmiller. We appreciate having you with us.
Oops, there we go. Very welcome, Paul, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
And I don't particularly have a formal presentation that I'm going to give to you. I think I shared with some of you, I don't know whether it was distributed to the whole committee, some of the past reports that we've written, a couple of annual reports about Blanding's turtles. I'm happy to answer your general questions, and just as a review or summary relative to the cemetery committee. So the Great Meadows area, which from the Blanding's turtle perspective includes the wetlands as well as the uplands on cemetery committee property that you guys are in charge of, is used extensively by this population of threatened turtles. Blanding's turtles are rare pretty much throughout their range, from Nebraska through southern New England into Nova Scotia. And in kind of a long interstate planning process that's been done since 2012, the Great Meadows population was classified as one of the 15 most critical populations of that species left in the northeastern US. And we've been working with Blanding's turtles in this area since 2003. There is currently an adult population of around 50 turtles. That's down from about 115 in the early 1970s. The problem, as far as we can tell, and working over the past years or so, is primarily historically poor survival rates for young turtles from nesting to adulthood. It takes them, for females, takes them about 18 years to reach adulthood. They've got so something of a similar life history pattern to us. They can live into their 80s or beyond. The adults generally live long lives in the Great Meadows area, but historically in recent decades, few young have managed to survive to grow up. So as part of our work with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, with Mass Wildlife and the town, we have been trying to intervene in a variety of ways. One way is to find and protect turtle nests so that they're not either, the eggs aren't either eaten by natural predators or inadvertently destroyed by human activity, since the turtles are typically nesting in kind of nowadays human-created disturbed sunny areas, often in people's front yards, but also in agricultural fields, cemetery areas like that. And then when the young hatch, which usually happens in August or September, we take the young hatchlings and we raise them for 9 months in captivity. And that allows them in those 9 months to get to the size of a wild 4 or 5-year-old typically. And then we release them, and that greatly increases their chances of survival to adulthood. We radio track a lot of the turtles. We radio track primarily the mothers, and also a lot of the young that we've released in the past, just to see how they're doing. From that, we know specifically that there is usually a couple or so females that live in the Moores Swamp wetland, which I think is controlled by the cemetery committee. And there are also a number of juveniles, some of which we had head started and released back there, which is right near where the nests were anyway, and others are ones that have found their own way into that wetland. And we have one female in particular who has habitually nested either in the cemetery or right nearby, as well as a number that nest over on the wastewater treatment plant area typically, and also in the Peter Spring field, right adjacent to the cemetery land. So I don't know, why don't I leave it there for the moment? I think that's just a very quick, broad description. I'm happy to answer any specific questions, or try to anyway, that you guys may have.
Brian, I had a question. Is there anything as a committee we can do to enhance the habitat for the turtles? Are there particular plants or environments that they seek out?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you, Mr. Davidson. I think yes, potentially. So Blading's turtles, they are essentially, the females are essentially looking for the warmest spots that they can find where digging is reasonably easy. And they're not, some other turtle species have really particular kind of substrate needs. Blading's turtles are they'll kind of take it a little more as it comes, but they like areas that are either partly open, bare soil, or closely mown grass, and in really sunny spots. They also particularly like areas that are right next to asphalt and rocks that, which act as heat sinks and warm up the adjacent soil. So they often nest right next to, I live right near Great Meadows. They nest in many areas in my neighborhood, right off the edges of these quiet suburban roads. This is the Peter Spring Road neighborhood, Arrowhead Road neighborhood. And they also often nest between in areas where there's a little strip of grass between the sidewalk and the curb. They often like areas like that. In general, in truth, the way that the cemetery is maintained as a cemetery provides very nice nesting habitat for the Blading turtles that tend to come in. So I think just maintaining the area essentially as a cemetery is, doing them, and the other species that are also, I know as Leo knows, there are also painted turtles and there are snapping turtles. There are still a few spotted turtles that live in the area, and they use similar kinds of habitat.
Brian, I have a question. Do you find them on the old railroad bed where the tracks used to be? And the reason I ask that is that I know Bedford is planning to pave their bicycle path there. And I'm just wondering if these are threatened by an increase in traffic and by paving that, if the town decides to pave it, if they will be affected by that.
Yeah, it's a very good question. And you're exactly right, Leo. So the asphalt, paving it or not, the surface, whether it's packed dirt or asphalt, that in of itself is not consequential. But the turtles cross that all the time. And in fact, with the exception of perhaps on average 2 females who normally in the spring would be living in more swamp, every single other female in that population needs to cross that trail, the old railroad right-of-way, to reach nesting habitat. There is no nesting habitat available on the wildlife refuge property. So every single one of those turtles needs to cross the Reformatory Branch Trail and come either to the wastewater treatment plant or Peter Spring Field, or the or most of them actually nest in the neighborhood in, again, the Minuteman Drive neighborhood, or Monson Road, or Butternut, Mallard, Minot Road neighborhood. They all need to cross that path, and their hatchlings, the ones that we don't find, because we only find about half the nests in a given year. So all of the hatchlings likewise then need to find their way to wetlands, which again will typically involve crossing the Reformatory Branch Trail. So yeah, a big increase in traffic, both in traffic itself and also the velocity of that traffic is definitely a potential.
So do you actually ever find any that have been run over?
Yes, we have. Yeah.
On that track?
Yeah.
So a strategy to help their chances of success might be to put some type of barriers or mechanisms in place to slow the traffic down on that one stretch between the town filter beds and Monument Street, because that kind of turns into a drag strip for these guys in there, you know, with the Flash Gordon helmets and the leotards and all. They just zip along there really fast. And as a human being, sometimes I worry about my safety. So I can't imagine some little thing, you know, this big on the middle of it. Thank you very much for your answer.
No, I agree. I think that is potentially a good resolution. You know, lots of people, both on foot, as you know, Leo, both on foot and by bicycle, use that area. And I think it's perfectly appropriate for all those uses. But from the turtles' perspective, slowing the speed down of the bicycle traffic would be a good thing. I'll also say, since this is also within your jurisdiction, another potential issue is bicycle use of the trail that cuts through the swamp itself and parallels the rail trail. I know I had spoken to Delia Kay about that a few years ago. I sent her photos, and you know, I walk there almost every day. With the pandemic, and as I'm sure you've experienced, a general increase in the number of people using every trail in Concord and elsewhere in every possible way, whether it's on foot or by bicycle. There's a lot more bicycle traffic as well as foot traffic, a lot more bicycle traffic down that muddy swamp trail. And a lot of young turtles move from one side to the other, as well as frogs and other wildlife species. And the bicycle traffic inevitably, tears ruts in the vegetation on that muddy path. So, it's your jurisdiction, but it strikes me that there is no particular need for people to ride their bicycles on that very narrow trail.
So what do you do to stop that? What can we do?
Yeah, you guys are much better positioned to answer that question than I. Yeah, I'm a biologist. Yeah, I'm a biologist. I would, as a start, most people are reasonably rule abiding, and as a start, a sign that says, please don't ride your bikes, on this path, because again, there's no need to, right? The rail trail parallels that path. So there's no need to ride your bicycle. And, the Minuteman National Park Battle Road Trail already has a policy that says, when on the wetland crossings, the signs say, please walk your bike. And they also do what I think, I can't remember, Brian, if you had suggested, but they also, create angles in the boardwalk in that stretch that makes it difficult to stay on your bike and ride it. So, perhaps a combination of, a barrier and a couple of signs, because it's not a lot of bicycle traffic there. I think if people just knew that don't do it, most people would abide by that.
That's actually, we're going to be talking later in the meeting. Bicycle issues are on the agenda today. So.
There's one other thing that, since you asked me to come here, and I'm grateful for that, Brian. One other thing that I may ask, I see you've got some cemetery department employees. And if I may ask, we often find, because there are a number of turtles that use the area, so during nesting season, in particular in June, we're typically out in the evenings, usually starting around 5:30 or so, when nesting Blanding's turtles are already on the move. They mostly nest around 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock. So we're often radio tracking turtles. And I know that the cemetery staff have that you guys try and make sure that the only car traffic that's in the cemetery is for people who are visiting graves and such in the cemetery. But I was just wondering if there's a reasonable solution for our staff to be able to, when we're tracking the turtles in the evenings in June, to park somewhere without running afoul of the cemetery work.
Sorry, Brian, you're kind of fading there at the very end there. You want some, you're asking about parking when your staff is there?
Yeah, is there a way for our staff from Zoo New England when we're tracking turtles, and it's an occasional event, you know, we often go, there's a good vantage point over Morris Swamp from that new section of Sleepy Hollow. So is there a way that our staff can, you know, park their car somewhere and walk out to that vantage point? You know, because I know there are signs that say no recreational use. You know, I guess I see us as not really being there.
What I would say is if you need parking in that area, we try not to have anybody park for an extended period of time. I think there's signs that are posted for 1 hour limits in some areas in the cemetery, unless you're there to visit the cemetery. What I could offer up is an area along it. I'm familiar with the neighborhood that you live in. Obviously, there's the access road to the wastewater treatment plant. There is some parking along there, and there's an access road there's an access, I'll call it a dirt path, if you will, that, you know, official vehicles use to access the backside of the newer section of the cemetery. I could talk to you offline, Brian, and we can identify an area maybe over there that we can allow some parking for.
Yeah, that would be great, over by that corner of the field off the dirt road.
I can, I think I have your email. If you want to call the Highway and Grounds office or check out the website, my email's on there. If you want to shoot me an email with a note, and I can follow up with you offline.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
More questions for Brian Wynn-Miller? I took a walk one morning in Sleepy Hollow years ago, and I saw a turtle down there, right where the bridge is that crosses a little stream that goes into a very big turtle, all wired up with a receiver. So hats off to you for what you've been doing for all these years. You've been watching out for these animals. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. That certainly would have been one of ours. We occasionally get people really wondering, you know, why the turtles. Actually, in the cemetery a couple of years ago, we found out indirectly that a well-meaning Concord resident had seen the turtle and figured that somebody was doing something, you know, evil to the turtle. So she immediately cut off the antenna that was dangling off the turtle.
And that does raise a question for me. Once you put these on and start tracking, what is, do you have a like average longevity of how long you're able to keep in contact? And once contact is broken, do you have a GPS so you can find what? Okay.
No, it's a good question. No, unfortunately, although there are a couple of GPS tag devices that people have tried to use, as we have with turtles, for a variety of technical reasons, they don't really work well. And so we need to the only good viable way of finding them is we actually put VHF radios on them. And that means that the batteries have a fixed life, more or less.
Yeah.
The radios that we use on the adult turtles last about 3 years. So we remove the radio. You can actually just sort of leverage the epoxy off and then send them in and get new batteries put in. And meanwhile, we put on a new radio. So, yeah. And sometimes, you know, the radio fails. It's hard to make these really tiny electronic setups. Sometimes the radios fail before time and we lose touch with the turtle, but we've worked there for so long that most times if that happens, sooner or later, we're going to encounter that turtle again. And you're
Yep. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Well, thank you all for your time and for giving me this opportunity. And I'm really happy if any of you are interested. The turtles, as I mentioned, nest in June, conveniently in the evenings, and generally on nice evenings in June. If it's raining, they usually don't bother. So if any of you are interested, you've got my email, and you know, whether it's me or one of our other staff members, we'd be happy to show you around and take you out in June when we're trying to locate the females and find their nesting sites. So you can let me know.
Thank you
Okay.
very much. And Brian,
Thank you.
thank you for inviting Brian Windmiller to join us. It's great. Hats off to you.
Thanks a lot. And thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, now we go to D4, filming request from PBS and Old Hill Burying Ground.
Yeah, so the application is included there. It's a request from PBS doing a series. Ken Burns is doing a series on the American Revolution, and what they want to do is use a drone to do some flyovers of the entire cemetery and then do some close-ups of the two stones in particular that were included, Colonel John Buttrick and Roger Brown. More specifically, I think they'll show their names, but then also they want to show if there's any engravings on the stones.
Tish, about this.
What, Paul?
Any questions does anyone have a question for Tish about this?
We ever ask for any gifts or anything like that? I know there's been past filming in the past or pictures in the past. I mean, it's obviously it's an awesome thing and a great thing to participate in. But we have spent a lot of money in these last few years making these stones look beautiful. Just wondering what we've done in the past.
Just one time, a few years ago, Netflix was doing some filming from the Old Hill Burying Ground, not really of it, but from it, of the church and of downtown. And for that, they were setting up cameras, pretty good sized cameras. And I had to be there while they were doing that filming. So because I was there and it took my time, they made, I think it was $1,000 donation. I did not make $1,000 that day. But I'm pretty sure that's what it was. I don't know if anyone remembers, Andrea or Paul. It's just a few years ago.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, that's the only time we've ever gotten, in my memory, a gift for any type of filming because it required staff presence.
Would you be required to be at this too, Tish, or would you? Yeah.
And just for a little bit, Brian, to maybe some more information for your question is that the reason there's an application is because Mass General Law prohibits any filming or photography of cemeteries unless it's approved by the cemetery. So that's why the town has this application. Typically, this would be something where if it was not a PBS filming documentary that, you know, the department might just approve it, but this is something we felt was appropriate to bring to the larger committee for kind of review and approval. But for other events in town, when it requires town staffing, obviously there's a use permit for parades, things of that nature, use of town property. So this is essentially a similar permit for use of the cemetery land and giving them permission to film.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea and obviously a no-brainer. But wherever I can try and get money, I'm interested in trying to get a little cash, but understand, no problem. Thank you.
Anyone else have a question for Tish regarding this?
Paul, this is Rod Rydell.
Hi, Rod. Good to see you.
Thank you. I know it's a little bit speaking out of order as not a committee member, but I did want to ask Tish, are there any considerations about potential or prevention or taking proactive measures on the part of the filming crew to make sure that they inadvertently don't damage any of the other headstones? You're on a slope. People can bump into headstones. Things could go sour, you know, in a way that is not intended. But what precautions and what assurances do they offer to respect the site?
Like I said, with that last request, we knew that the equipment that they were bringing in was a pretty substantial size, which is why I was there to make sure that nothing got damaged and nothing was touched. For this, I know they're using a drone, and I think the other cameras that they're using are just handheld for the close-ups on the headstones. But we do ask, in addition, we ask them to protect the privacy of anybody else. We do ask if they do take any pictures that in any way make any other headstones legible, that they blur the names. So if somebody wants to take a picture of Louisa May Alcott's headstone, we kind of know that that family is used to it, but the family next to hers may not be. So we do ask them to blur those.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts or questions before we move and have a motion on this one? Do we have a motion to approve?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the application for photography for the PBS special.
Brian Davidson moves. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I'll
Andrea
second.
Solomon seconds the motion. All right, let's go around. Paul Cook says aye. Andrea Solomon,
Aye.
Jerry Susi,
Aye.
Leo Carroll,
Aye.
Brian Davidson.
Aye.
It's unanimous. The motion passes. Is approved. Thank you, Tish, for bringing that to us. I'll look forward to seeing the Ken Burns show. He always does a great job. All right. Now we go to D5, bicycles in the cemetery discussion, which we were sort of in some way were segue from what Mr. Windmiller was helped think about a little bit. Aaron McCloskey has some signs that he's about ready to have made. He's got some text for it. But before we finally go ahead, we were wondering, I think we touched on this last time, do we need to have any language on that sign regarding bicycles? I think that we talked a little bit about perhaps language to the effect of please restrict bicycle use to paved surfaces. Which is a possibility. We're going to put those signs, I think, along the border of the cemetery as you come in from the swampy area that we have been concerned about. I think we're going to have maybe 4 signs made. Aaron, review for us what the status is so far on these signs and where they'll be placed.
We have signs that we've requested from our sign company. We've gone back and forth a couple of times. We're waiting for the final proof from them. And obviously after this discussion, if we need to add some verbiage related to, something along the lines of please keep bicycle traffic on paved surfaces only, something like that. We will have them add that, but we're just waiting for a final proof from them before we order the signs. The signs will be located on the trail side. So the Reformatory Branch trail side of the cemetery at the trailheads, and then we'll have an extra one that we'll keep on the shelf in case one needs to be replaced.
Right. Now, of course, if they're coming from the Reformatory Trail, none of those paths are paved. So that language, if it were to be on the sign, would be in reference to once they got into the cemetery.
Correct. And I think one of them was also, we were talked about like on the Reformatory Branch trail side, just at the bridge coming over to Vesper Circle.
Yeah, right.
As a second reminder.
Would the signs be further back, closer to Reformatory Trail as well?
I would put them right on the ones that, like, if you look at the trail map, the trails that enter right off the Reformatory Branch going towards the cemetery, I'd install them right there, just a few feet in, so that people can see that they're now entering the cemetery lands and what our requests are. And then one reminder, just after they come over the bridge in that area where we've seen a lot of heavy bicycle traffic, and notice that that's the area where we're seeing most of the damage, bicycles running over grave sites.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's open it up to thoughts and comments from the committee about bicycles and signs.
Paul, may I?
Jerry, please.
Yeah, I guess my impulse is to suggest that bicycle riding not be allowed in the cemetery proper. You could ride along the Reformatory Trail, but if you're going to cut through the cemetery, you get off your bike and you walk it.
Yeah, I'm used to that kind of sign. When I used to go into Cambridge and walk through Harvard Yard, there was always be a sign as you enter Harvard Yard. It says, "Please walk your bike." Though I don't know who stands around to enforce it. Most people, as Mr. Windmiller was saying, tend to be rather law-abiding and they get off their bikes. But I think Aaron's concern about signs like that is that it's hard to post a sign that you can't sort of enforce. I think I agree with you, Jerry. I think I would like to see that language. The question is, to what extent do we want to post signs that we are not able to police? I mean, I'm not saying that's a law. I'm just saying it's a thought.
I think I'd be more interested in maybe taking, shorter steps, before we got to that point, see how these signs do. If there's other critical areas, think about signage, I think that's a pretty, you have the town promoting bicycle tours in the cemetery, so to say, well, you have to walk your bike. I mean, it's a pretty good distance between the entrance of the location, closest to town to all the way to Arthur's Ridge. I think I would be more inclined to see shorter steps before we got to that point, but that's just my view on.
What if it was to walk your bike on paved paths, but then on unpaved, walk your bike on unpaved surfaces, and then once you're in the cemetery that's paved, you just stay on the paved surface, but you can ride. Getting kind of technical there, but that would sort of halfway between what Jerry suggested and what you suggest. That is some kind of prohibition on biking on those unpaved trails, but liberty to bike in the paved area. Go ahead, Aaron.
Well, if I might comment, what I would want to do again is just, what you mentioned a moment ago is coming up with a regulation that we cannot enforce and that overcomplicates anything to people that might just be passing through, that might not even, most people probably don't even stop to read the signs, that are coming through and speeding along. The people that, I should say, the people that would be violating the regulation probably wouldn't stop to read the sign. What I would suggest is maybe something, because it sounds like, to Brian's comment of maybe taking some smaller steps in actions. So I'm a member of the town's Transportation Advisory Committee. We have a subcommittee, and that is called the Bicycle Subcommittee, and it deals with bicycle-related issues throughout town. The Transportation Advisory Committee is made up of members of various departments throughout town and citizens and residents. And we have a bicycle subcommittee to address specifically bicycle related issues. And I might suggest that this committee have a liaison that maybe reaches out to the bicycle subcommittee and have some conversations about some of the issues that we're observing as a committee and a department related to bicycles, and maybe talk it through a little bit before making a decision on restricting bicycle usage, specifically in the cemetery. Because there are other, and I will say that there are other areas in town, public areas in town, specifically Junction Park in West Concord, where there's been concerns about bicycle usage and restricting those, and how do we restrict, we, the town, restrict bicycle usage in the park, dealing with almost the same exact issue, Paul, of people speeding through, there's pedestrians in the park, and the concerns related to safety. So the Transportation Advisory Committee created a bicycle subcommittee to kind of further discuss those issues, as well as town-wide bicycle related issues. So this seems to fall kind of in that category. So I would maybe recommend that somebody from this committee reach out to the committee members. There is if you go on the Town of Concord's website under committees, Transportation Advisory Committee, there's a specific webpage just for the bicycle subcommittee. There's contact information for the members of that subcommittee, and maybe somebody from the committee reach out to that group and just have a conversation, and then kind of come back to the group. That would be my suggestion.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Aaron. More thoughts?
I'd like to suggest that maybe, and I agree with what people have been saying here, but I don't think most people read those signs, especially if you're on your bicycle. You're kind of paying attention to staying on your bicycle. Certainly at this point in my life I am, but I think you need something more than a sign. And I think perhaps some fiscal barriers such that the person has to get off their bike to go on to the next leg of their journey, like right at the, the bridge down at Chestnut Hollow. If you could have, a barrier such that a person could walk through it, but it'd be a little more difficult for a bicycle, then they'd have to get off to get through it. And then if there was a sign there, most likely they would be in a position to read the sign. But unless you kind of force an action on people, they're just going to keep on cruising. I think that's my opinion on it.
Thank you, Leo.
And I really think we, Mr. Windmiller said earlier, I think we've got a real issue with people going across that filled-in swamp area to the point where, this is an endangered species and we're damaging that habitat. We can stop some of the damage by just putting up a barrier that would force someone to get off their bicycle and have one of those little, those European do not enter signs with a bicycle on it. Maybe that would work.
They have signs like that around Great Meadows.
Oh yeah.
They don't want bikes in there.
Right.
Thank you, Leo. Other thoughts?
Paul?
Go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, at the risk of repeating myself, I mean, I know when this was an issue just before the pandemic hit, and I did some research, and there's precedent for bicycles being prohibited in cemeteries, bicycle riding being prohibited in cemeteries, and Mount Auburn, say, is the nearest example. Having the ground destroyed or damaged, this isn't just a historical destination. The cemetery is a final resting place. And, the nature of some of the damage and the nature of some of the, people coming across burials and being disruptive and everything is, I guess we have a special duty because of the special nature of the place. And I think what Aaron raises as, a channel for us as a committee to make our concerns known, that, yes, it's a desirable destination. Yes, there's historical and, literary references there, but it is a place for the dead.
Thank you, Jerry. More thoughts and comments?
I had one question about the Chestnut Hollow. I know we have the rope across the road to block car traffic down in that circle during the winter, but it does seem to kind of force the bikes to either side of the grass, because would there be an ability to put like a bollard or whatever some other kind of obstruction that would be able to prevent a car, but allow the bikes to not have to go around the ropes?
Mm-hmm.
Only up for the winter and early spring. I'll be taking it down soon. In the summer, when the ground is dry and people can drive around that circle and not leave tire marks on headstones. So it's just been too wet, but mid-May that chain comes down and it's down until November, December.
But would there be some other kind of obstruction that would allow bikes to pass onto using the pavement, but not allow cars into that area?
I don't know, we have to come up with something. A bollard might be tough because we do plow it and I'd have to get it out of there in the winter in the snow, but we could probably find something. Ultimately, honestly, I'd like to get rid of that road. That's a goal.
I mean, the whole turnaround down there.
Yeah, shouldn't even be there.
That's a thought. That's a new thought. Well, we have a lot in front of us right here. We can't decide everything at once, but it is our job to make some decisions. But my daughter's an MD, and she said someone told her once that MD means make a decision. Well, we're not MDs, but I think sometimes we do need to make decisions.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're ready to make a big decision today, but I think ultimately we want to make a decision about bicycles, traffic, and the various shades of it. I think Aaron's suggestion of one of us being a liaison to the bike subcommittee of the transportation committee is a good place to at least make a start. though we're not dependent on what that committee says, that we don't have to listen to them, but it's nice to develop a kind of consensus. So I don't think it's a bad idea. I do know that Aaron's waiting on some language. I don't know if we're ready yet to give him that language to finish off these signs. We can certainly wait another month. I think I spoke with Aaron earlier. He liked the idea of something to the extent of please, bicycles, please stay on paved surfaces, which I think would be helpful in the cemetery part that's paved, but then we have the whole other area that we were talking about north of Chestnut Hollow, north of the little bridge that goes across the creek there, and south of Reformatory Trail. There's nothing paved in there, and Mr. Brian Windmiller was telling us how that area gets a lot of, or not a lot, but gets some bike traffic. And I know most of us have walked in there, and you can see the ruts. I haven't seen any dead turtles, but I've seen people biking around in there because it's fun. If you're a kid and you want to go fast and it's hilly, it's more fun than just being on the Reformatory Trail. But maybe we could encourage kids like that to have fun elsewhere. But as I say, I'm not hot to trot to do something definitive right now. I don't think we're ready to. So is there someone interested in being at least going once to be liaison over at the Transportation Bicycle Committee subcommittee?
I'm happy to go contact them.
Brian, I think that's great. I mean, you've also already been, I know you've been to several other committees about matters to do with bikes. So I think that would be super. And then you can bring back to the committee further information about what the next step might be. And perhaps we should just delay finalizing those signs until we know a little bit more clearly. Why make a sign and then say, oh, I wish we put X on it when it's already been made?
There is some language in under Article 2 of our rules and regulations. It's under a weird heading. It says etiquette, but it says visitors are expected to stay on roads and paths and to refrain from trespassing upon grave lots wherever possible. That seems like a lot to put on on a sign, but that is some of the already stated language we have. And I noticed that rule, isn't anywhere on the signage that we have. So I think that'd be great to come up with more condensed language, but to communicate that sentiment.
Brian, here's a suggestion. Perhaps you could come up, get what language we already have from Aaron, and come up with, say, 3 different textual suggestions, 3 different three sets of language that might go on a sign, and then present it to the committee and say, look, guys, here's A, B, and C. And maybe the committee will want to merge A and C or edit it, but at least it's a place to start. And then you get feedback from everybody, including Tish and Aaron. And maybe in the not too distant future, we can come up with language we want. In the meantime, we can put a weight on finishing the signs. Does that sound reasonable, everybody?
Yeah.
Sure, I'll send Aaron a message, emails.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, I think we're done with this topic. D6, Melbourne Memorial Maintenance. Do you remember, maybe most of you do, I don't remember. I know that when Daedalus, which is the outfit who restored the Melbourne Memorial, finished it 2 years ago, he told us that he would be ready to come back in a year to do some maintenance, just to clean it. And we also talked about it would be a good idea to have a regular maintenance schedule every year or 2 or 3, so that the Melbourne Memorial restoration is preserved as long as possible. So we missed last year because of the pandemic, but June's coming up. It'll be 2 years since the restoration. And I wanted to see if we could agree to contact Daedalus and see if they can engage them to come out and do some maintenance on clean it, whatever needs to be done. Aaron told me there's about $15,000 still in the fund for the Melvin. I don't know what Daedalus, I think he said the first time he'd come out, he might even do it free. I don't remember. Did anybody remember him saying that? I thought I heard him say that. Maybe I was just imagining it. But we do have some money. I don't think it's going to be, I think we have enough in there to probably do it 5 times. It couldn't be more than 3,000. But anyway, I would like to, if you all agree, I'd like to ask Aaron to contact Daedalus and see if we can schedule, get a price on his maintenance and see if we can schedule it. That sound like a good idea?
Yeah, sounds like a very good idea.
All right. I don't know if we need a motion for that. Do you think we do? No.
Oh, no, I'll reach out to him.
Okay, Aaron, thank you so much.
Got it.
It looks beautiful. It looks beautiful. Oh, and while we're on the Melbourne, let me ask, Aaron, is there going to be any complications in getting Ben Winslow's documentary about the Melvins up on our website?
It is currently, there's a link currently on there.
Oh, great. Is it under the Melvin aspect of the, that's super.
Yeah,
Great.
Justine was able to get it on the website today.
Oh, wonderful. Justine, thank you.
And also the history of the committee.
Oh, yeah. You remember that Tish did all the work on that. I just sort of put it together. We have a history of the first 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 years of the cemetery committee, which I put together using all of Tish's work. And it is now up on the website under cemetery committee. That's where you can find it. Ralph Waldo Emerson was the first chairman of the cemetery committee. So anyway, that's sort of fun. Anyway, thank you very much, Justine and Aaron, for getting that up. Okay. Now we go update on the committee's priority projects, record scanning and headstone restoration. Aaron, can you just give us a catch up on that?
Absolutely. So the record scanning, we're still working with Boston Scan, who is working on finalizing the mapping. Again, that's going to take quite a while. Tish has been spending quite a bit of time working with them to try to finalize that to get it just right. So it's going to take a few more weeks, maybe a month for them to finalize. We have a lot of old records that were scanned in and trying to making sure that our paper records are going to reflect accurately what's going to be depicted on the website for public access. So we want to make sure that is squared away before we do a final release. So that's actively being worked on. I mentioned at the last month's meeting that the headstone restoration project will be delayed due to a few different issues, staffing mainly related, and we'll get those done in July. Get that started in July, and we'll be getting essentially 2 batches worth, 2 seasons worth this summer.
Great,
so.
Great. That's great. Any thoughts or questions for Aaron about that? Either of those things? Okay, let's go to D8. Master plan continued discussion. Point 1, tree planting, erosion reduction plan. That's Leo.
Yep. You know, what we had was a discussion a while back, and Aaron came out and we walked a couple of areas. So just by way of review, the Ephraim Wales bull grave, and then by the Verrill family grave, we're going to put some new loam on the top and try some different seeding such that we can learn what will actually survive. It's quite surprising to me. I've seen a couple of spots where just recently some places have been reseeded, and the seed that came up, it just didn't seem to be as good as the old seed. I gotta believe it has something to do with the differences in temperature of the surface, ground surface, because of the heating that's going on. So we don't really have an answer to this stuff. This is what is most disturbing to me. This climate change, global warming, there is no easy answer. Put this type of seed in, we'll solve the problem. Put these trees in, we'll solve the problem, because the trees have been there for 100 years. They're pretty diseased right now, and they're probably not the one to be putting in for the future. So we're starting, I granted on a small scale, but we're looking at a couple of areas where we're gonna, we're gonna see them using some variety and see what works best. And this is not new. I can tell you, I looked at some of the old Concord annual reports from, it wasn't even called the highway department. When they first started building roads in Concord, they didn't know how to do it. There was no national road system. There were no national contractors. They were guessing as they went along, and they came up with some pretty good guesses, but it wasn't a quick solution right away. So if anybody knows a better way of doing it, I'm all ears on this. I'm sure Aaron is too, but we're just trying to find out what works. I mean, a great attempt was made on the Melvin brothers' actual gravesite, and it didn't work. There were 2 shots at it. They were both done the right way, and it doesn't look good right now, and the seed is not taking. So we're learning, and we're trying to, get as much information from other places as we can. So if anyone's got solutions on what should be planted there, maybe it isn't grass, maybe it's clover, maybe it's something else. But that's what we're going to do. We're going to put some alternatives down and see how it works. You got anything else to add, Aaron? Sometimes I embellish things. It's the Irish in me, but you got something else to say? Go ahead. Thank you.
Great, Leo. Well, I'm glad you're on it. And I think you pretty much decided not to bother the folks at the University of Massachusetts Extension.
Well, Aaron and Tish have worked with them all for a long time. So they're already in contact with them, and they're using them on, we have periodic samples sent from the playgrounds and places like that. So we already have the communications with them. And so our issue in the cemetery is that we don't irrigate and we don't fertilize. And so that's a lot different than using on the playgrounds of the high school. So,
well, could we irrigate and fertilize? We don't have the staff. Is that the idea? Or we don't have the money? Which is it?
To what? Irrigate?
The staff. Why do we not irrigate and fertilize?
Well, because it was never designed to be irrigated. That was not, Emerson and Kais and those people didn't ever plan to have it irrigated. If you look at the hills and all, it's not the right situation to be doing irrigation. And of course, then there'd be the infrastructure put in place to irrigate it. And that's not, I just can't see that happening. I don't think it makes sense to have it happening. It's supposed to be a natural type of environment for the most part. And then as far as fertilizer is concerned, that's a big expense. And I think, you look at these insecticides and herbicides, and it's the jury's still out on that. It looks pretty good, but the birds die and the mosquito and the bugs die and stuff like that. So I think we want to leave it as natural as we possibly can, but understand that we're adapting with climate change.
Leo, what about Mount Auburn and other cemeteries like that? Maybe there's some experience over there that you could tap?
Well, I'd have to ask Aaron and Tish. I know Tish has been in contact with them. They're more like a park-like setting, I think. Tish, you correct me if I'm wrong, but every time I've been over there, it's more of I think they might actually irrigate and fertilize it. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
All right.
They've been experimenting with some different grasses that don't require as much maintenance, that don't grow as high, that they don't have to maintain that often, and that they don't have to fertilize with. They also have a lot more money than we do.
All right. Well, I'm glad you're on it, Leo. Because it's the squeaky wheel that gets the grease, right? And you keep bringing it up, and I think that's the way it's going to get. Eventually, we're going to find something. I hope.
Yeah, I hope so.
Any other thoughts for Leo or Aaron and Tish on this?
I got to say this. I'm open for suggestions. In fact, I'm just short of begging at this point, but this has been a problem for a long time. And I've gone through and looked at some of the old, town reports and meeting notes from the cemetery committee. This has been going on for a long time. And, I hope we are the ones that come up with some solution, but I do see, especially this time of year after a rough winter, I see a lot more, rocks at the surface because of erosion that's taking place. And So it remains a pretty big, important issue to deal with.
Leo, you got to talk to those people who have the plots up kind of, I don't know, it's kind of around Martin's Road there. There's like 4 gray tombstones.
Yeah.
People have
Yeah.
that grass.
Rhodes, yeah, they and the olds, they actually fertilize those. They do fertilize them themselves, and they're down there on a pretty regular basis. You know which one he's talking about, Tish? Rhodes lot?
Way back, it's in the very northwest corner, not too far away from the Windmill Hill Road area. Right, way over there. It's beautiful.
It's heading towards Martin Road off to the left. Yeah, they
spends a
do
lot of
fertilize
time.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that fella spends a lot of time manicuring that grass.
Right, and I think the question is is if people think it's that important, that big a deal on their lot, they can do that.
Yeah. Right. Thank you, Leo. It's why it's on the agenda. We come to it every month. To keep it on a front burner.
Well, I guess next month is when, or is it May? Aaron, is it May, or I thought you said May, you were going to actually put the loam down and try the different seating.
We'll be working on it this month.
Okay, perfect. So I'll have news to report next month.
That's good, Leo. That's great. I'd like to go on to the next issue. It's the Columbaria with Andrea and Jerry.
Okay, can I share my screen?
Go ahead, Jerry, whatever you need to do.
Yep, you should be able to.
All right. Right, so Andrea and I have met a couple times. We've been out to the site, also had a chance. We've also had a chance to talk to Aaron and Tish. And what I'd like to do is just kind of give an overview of what's what. Here is a simple columbarium, 6 rows, 4 columns, or 6 columns, 4 rows. Each kind of block area is a crypt, a niche, a sealed area for the cremated remains. Sometimes for 2 people, sometimes even for 4. Similar item, a little bit bigger, encased in polished granite. They can be pretty large scale and kind of like major architectural elements. And here's a plaza. All of the walls, the exterior walls here have niches. So it's not just a unit, it's a place.
Can't see it yet, Jerry.
What's that?
I don't think we can see it yet. At least I can't.
I can't either, no.
Okay,
There it is.
Okay, there you go, all right.
how about that?
You see that's your first one.
That's the first one, okay.
Yeah.
Very simple.
Yeah. There we go.
Here's another one, polished granite. Landscape size, almost looks like a outdoor movie screen. This is more like a plaza and with brick and gray stone and everything, but you can see how on the periphery, all those walls have the niches in them.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's very elaborate. Yeah.
So here essentially is what it is though, right? You can buy, they're manufactured, they're prefabricated, they're installed on the site. You know, you can use them like Legos for all intents and purposes. They can, you know, the idea can be pretty imposing though. It can have this notion of, you know, solidity and a wall and almost like an obstacle. Here's an example from Europe. This is a large scale, but if you look within this grid, each of those small squares is a set of niches with a place for flowers and so forth. And the bottom are filled, the top aren't. This obviously isn't something that we're even considering for Concord, but the idea that the wall doesn't have to be an imposition, that there can be opportunities to have light come through. This is also from out in Europe, a pretty ambitious cemetery columbarium project. Here's, materials and textures more familiar to us in New England, right? The traditional New England stone wall. Textures and colors and shapes that are more familiar to us. So I just want to have us keep those in mind. All right, what you should see here is a bird's eye view of Sleepy Hollow.
No.
Right, with the
That-
property. Yes, no?
Yeah, right, good, yes.
Okay. So here's the property. Here's Arthur's Ridge. Here's the knoll. We'll zoom in on the knoll. And this is the basic area that we're talking about. And the curved piece is a paved asphalt pathway. And the little rectangle there is a set of granite stairs. All right, so let's come out of the sky. Oh, there's where I parked my car. Let's come out of the sky. Well, this was today. Today was a gorgeous day with, all the flowering trees and shrubs and stuff. We're at the top of this asphalt walkway. Look over to our left and you can see this area that's set aside for future graves. I don't know if they've been marked up, but nothing's happening there right now. And what I call your attention to is under this arrow, you really can't see them, but there are the railings for these stairs.
Mhm.
Here's a close-up. The stairs to nowhere. But they kind of make an important mark in this whole area. So we'll step back again, go to the top of the path, and we're going to just start walking down, right? We go down to the curve, come under this beautiful flowering tree, and that takes us to the end of the paved area and the bottom of the stairs and this kind of landing zone, I call it. So we'll step into the landing zone and turn around and see where we've come. And you can get a sense now of the slope. We'll start looking to our right across this slope. You can see kind of barely the top of my car parked up there. And over on the right edge, you could see the flag that's in the center of the knoll. Continue looking to our right. There's the stairs, and you get a sense of kind of the difference in elevation from top to bottom. Look across that landing area, and I just want to point out that off in the distance are the two areas that have been noted for the Indigenous settlements. There's the Friends Bench kind of off to the right, and then there's the stone and plaque more mid-center. And I point those out just because they're there, it's a reference point, but this might be an opportunity to make some kind of, in our design, to make some kind of reference toward that space. Pivoting around, looking toward the swamp, this takes you into the woods and a marked trail. And everything that we need to do kind of in this area can be done well within the areas that we don't have to be concerned about impacting buffer zone or wetlands. Going back to the stairs, going up to the top of them and looking back into the woods. Again, just kind of getting a sense of the space. Looking across, looking up from the stairs, back across to the knoll and the drive. Stepping over to the drive, and here's the steps. That's the tree we walked under. All right, where I parked my car. Again, the steps, and looking over to our left, and those two marked areas. So the marked areas, and then the general space that we're looking at. I just want to share a couple of impressions, and this happened to me the first time I came down this. When we come down this path, right, and then it's a very gradual decline. We come around the corner and we come into the space, and I'm immediately reminded of what Maya Lin did with the Vietnam War Memorial. The idea of kind of walking down into a space and the space revealing itself as you step in and then step out. Another notion is these granite steps. In a way, they're kind of nowhere, but in another way, it's like, hey, they're interesting materials. And there's lots of ways to have stone and grass interact in interesting ways. It doesn't just have to be monolithic. It can be playful. Again, looking over to where the stairs are and looking over from the road, I'm really in love with the idea of the slopes and in doing something that's kind of over the edge here. But also have to recognize that there may be people that are better served with something that's more accessible. This idea is just a low kind of set of niches, almost like looking over a low stone wall with the stairs in the middle, and kind of playing with the idea of what that would look like from the other side, from the bottom. Again, I really think that the slopes are an opportunity to do a bunch of interesting things. And then looking at the landing area and the way that it takes you into kind of another space. It's just a very contemplative area in a way that is different, similar to other parts of the property, but also very different. And so that's really kind of what I have here. This is what we've been looking at. Let's just kind of step back. And that's the end of the scrapbook. I'll stop the share.
Very nice. That really helps get a notion of what you and Andrea have been thinking about. It's interesting, really interesting.
It really has been a matter of looking at the space. Mm-hmm. And how to use it and leverage it and turn this into an area that is, you know, less industrial and more contemplative. Mm-hmm. The next big step is to get some ballpark estimates, taking up some vendors on their offers to, give us some quotes or sketch out some designs. But we also have, a $10,000 design budget. So as we kind of go forward, we'd like to start working with someone who can take some of these vague ideas and make them more real.
Great. Andrea, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes.
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Andrea. Yes, you. He asked you, Andrea.
I would just add that one part of getting the ball rolling forward before we have anyone come out and do any sketches or specs is that we do need, I think, advice from Delia and the town engineer. I think that anyone drawing any specs for us needs elevations. I found that out from Tish. And there are some setbacks that we have to be aware of. Certainly anyone drawing anything would want to be aware of. So we need that, I think, from Aaron or someone else. Maybe it's the engineer that would let us know, and we can provide that information to whoever we decide to work with on at least preliminary sketches. That's all I would add.
Aaron, can you, could you add something here about how that could be done so they could take the next step?
Yep, I agree with what Andrew just said, that we'll get town engineer, we can engage them. They've done some survey already out there for the Mausoleum sites. Talked to Delia. When Jerry and I were out there, I kind of roughly looked at the GIS mapping that we had. I think we're outside of any wetland areas, but we will be close to it. So have Delia come out, take a look at it. We work closely with her on a number of initiatives from NRC, and make sure they're all engaged and aware of what's going on, and try try to move this project forward.
Great. So that's the next step, Jerry and Andrea, is to get this info to, or waiting on Aaron to get the engineers on board?
I would say that, when Jerry and I met last week and reviewed the area, I did ask her to kind of continue to look at some ideas and put some things together. And I think, we could probably meet collectively once we have some more ideas with, or he has some more kind of, either with this PowerPoint slide that he just shared, happy to meet with him and the town engineering staff and kind of look at next steps and kind of explain our ideas and where we're going.
Okay. Do other members of the committee have thoughts or questions for Jerry or Andrea about the presentation, which I think really gives you a sense of, well, first of all, you've been really thoughtful about it, that you're not just jumping into this thing. And second, we get a good idea of where we're talking about. But I don't know, Leo or Brian, have you?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment. First of all, it was great. I thought, I agree with everything you said. It's an ideal setting. And the only concern I would have, and I think Tish is probably more of an expert on than I am, I think that ground is fairly soft and moist. So I think probably the first thing that needs to be done is some soil samples to determine what type of material can be supported on that type of soil. That's the most important thing. I know when they built the Washington Monument or the Lincoln Memorial in DC, they found out there were cracks in it very quickly because it started sinking. So I know Tish has sometimes dug in to dig a grave there and it gets wet. So I think they're gonna have to go probably deeper down and put some type of a platform below it. But even that will only support certain types of materials. So if you're looking out for what to build there, you probably wouldn't be able to support marble or some really dense type of material. But I don't know. The answer comes from the soil samples that are done early in the process.
That's helpful.
Foundations under them. The part of the design is the foundation.
Yeah.
And it's actually not bad soil down. It's it's not that wet.
Okay.
And these vendors, I would expect that they know what they need to do before they come in. Though I think you're right. You do want to give them as much, Andrea, you do want to give them as much information as you can before you call them, so as not to, waste time, their time or yours. Other thoughts or questions for Jerry or Andrea about where we are with this thing? Oh yeah, go ahead, Rod.
So this is just a matter of information for Jerry and Andrea. Is the location of the Columbaria, is that fixed? Has it already been decided that it needs to be at that place along the walk by that iron rail, or alternatively, could it be somewhere along that curved paved path that was more like the decreasing grade of the Vietnam Memorial?
Good question. Go ahead, Andrea.
So this has been part of at least the cemetery committee's discussion since I've been on the committee. So it's been like 6 or 7 years. And one reason that area is attractive is the reason that stairway was built is originally, and Tish has explained this, I think, several times to us, that there were going to be graves there. And because of setbacks and different issues, there couldn't be graves there. So it is a way to use that space to make that staircase going somewhere. That space wouldn't be otherwise used for anything else. And I think that in the future, like, this is a start for our Columbaria, but as we know from reports we've gotten from Aaron and Tish over the years, Columbaria are very popular requests from people who are looking for alternative burial sites to full graves, especially because cremation is becoming so much more prevalent. And this could be just the beginning. So in the future, it would be good to look at other sites and maybe something along that curved path, or that, a design would look good there. But this might be a good place to start. It's also, I know some people are concerned about structures going up in the cemetery, and this structure would be so, in the way I've envisioned it and the way we've discussed it before, it is so built into that landscape that's there that wouldn't be used for anything else, that it may be a very gentle way to introduce this to that area of the cemetery.
Mhm.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Thank you.
good, good. Other thoughts, questions, comments? So it looks like the next step then, Aaron, is you will.
Paul, sorry, I was muted. I just want to say this. I talked to John Arena this week, who now owns a D funeral home, and he said there's a lot of interest in this. So this is a type of thing we might want to get started fairly quickly. But the concept, or the portion we haven't talked about, I think, is perhaps the agreement on the interment there might be different than what we used to, because I understand in a lot of places, people will have, a spot in the columbarium and then move off to Silicon Valley and want to take grandma and grandpa with them. So the traditional putting someone into a grave, there might be a variation on that theme with this concept.
When we did, I think it was in November of 2018, we had a public hearing about, this is to do with the mausoleum, but we also talked about Columbaria. And I think John Arena came to us and said, at the end of the meeting, there's a whole lot of interest in Columbaria. And so yeah, what you say, that's been repeated. I mean, the deep folks should know, right? And we know too, I mean, the stats that we see at the end of every year, more and more people are using cremation as a way of preparing remains for burial. So good. So Aaron, I think that means that the next step is in your hands, that to get the engineers over there.
Yeah, I would like to schedule some time with our engineering group and Jerry and Andrea, and kind of talk about some of the concepts we've discussed here and next steps. So.
Okay, great. That's great. All right. Any last minute thoughts on this before we move on to the next thing? Jerry, thank you again for putting that PowerPoint together. That was great. And Andrea and Jerry, thank you both for being the subcommittee on this thing. That's what's gotten us moving. All right, undeveloped land use. Brian, we've already sort of touched on this, but you may have some more to share.
Just looking around, there's this Neshoba Regional Greenway project. It's kind of a little mixed, but they're looking to, really try and connect all the old trailways. So that would be the reformatory branch, but it's very early in the beginnings. But like you say, I think we certainly covered this area. So happy to move on.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Next thing, mausoleum sites for the new area. I think we've got that under control. Aaron's gotten, I think we can probably take that off of our agenda. It's nice to get things done, right? If you don't have it as a goal, you don't get there. So we have goals, we're trying to reach them. Now, the last thing is the further review of the history of the new area. And this was prompted by last time we met. When last time we met, we talked a little bit. Actually, I discovered that there was a whole history to the plan for the new area. And that, in part because Tish is an encyclopedia regarding the history of the cemetery. What I wanted to do was to suggest in some way incorporating what we now have discovered about the history of the plan for the new area into the master plan, so that that idea is not lost. I'm not saying that it needs to be adopted, but that it's recorded for future reference. So what I did was I just drafted some material. Justine, do you have that? Would you put that up for us?
Yep, no problem.
Thank you. This is just the language. You've all got in your packets a portion from the cemetery's master plan. And this is the way Andrea and another one of the members of the committee designed the master plan. The last section of it is part 6. And it's to do, the part 6 is all to do with the new area. And I thought that this might be a possible way of incorporating what we learned last month from Tish into the master plan, so that we're reminded, because we are encouraging ourselves to review the master plan annually, reminding ourselves of the possibility of this sort of development of that property. Let me just read it to you. Each one has a current status and a goal, and it has a title. So this is just drafted language. It doesn't have to stay like this. Acres north of the presently developed new area, which is sometimes called the knoll. Current status: this area is completely forested and contains trails, hillocks, and other sloping topographical features. A plan created in the 1980s called for its development and all of the presently utilized area south of it, including the area we just looked at with Jerry's PowerPoint. It's a plan created in the 80s called for its development with sections of trees, winding roadways, and retention of the original topography, much resembling the design of the older part of Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. Though already greatly defined, that plan was put aside because of concerns about maximizing space to use for graves. The goal: the original design plans, which included development ideas for these acres, still exists. In keeping with the wish to sustain Sleepy Hollow Cemetery as a unique garden cemetery, consonant with its original plan, and to provide a basis and ideas for future development of this part of the cemetery, the 1980s plan should be rehabilitated for future reference. New plans, perhaps prompted by this well-developed older one, should be periodically considered with the view of eventually continuing the garden cemetery theme in this area and these acres. I guess it was Mr. Burkitts who came last month and wondered why the new area didn't look like the old area, the old part of Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. And I didn't know the answer, but Tish did. That originally the plan for the acres, I think there was 21 acres in all, was to make it look similar to the old area of Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. But that plan was abandoned because someone came to a cemetery committee meeting, a resident of Concord, who happened to be the president of Mount Auburn Cemetery, and he thought it was not a good idea to develop that plan because it would be, in some sense, using too much burial space for what we could call aesthetics. It was very beautiful, but it would be wasteful of the space considering how many graves we're going to need eventually. And so the cemetery committee shelved that plan, which Tish thinks was a very nice one. And we've seen the sketch of it. It looked quite impressive. That was shelved. And then the first section of that area was used for the area we now call the new area, or the knoll, with its Jewish section, and the area also that includes where we're going to put the columbarium and where we've designed to put the, where we're planning to put mausoleum sites. But the back acres, and I don't know how many there are, going all the way to the Reformatory Trail, are still very wooded, like parts of Sleepy Hollow, old part of Sleepy Hollow. And it seems to me that that theme, which was the original vision of Emerson and his friends, could be continued in that area. I know that we want to husband the area so that we have graves for 100 years from now. So it would have to be done thoughtfully, but I don't think it's quite, we have to accept the verdict of the president of Mount Auburn Cemetery 40 years ago, that we should just not develop those northern acres of the new area in a different way than the front area of the new area has been done, if that makes any sense. So anyway, I want to just leave it at that and see what sort of thoughts the committee has.
Paul, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Jared.
Well, I guess I'm just, as I was looking at the area regarding the whole Columbaria, you know, if you stand at the road and looking to left or right, it is just, you know, very smooth, flat, wide open. So one of the things moving forward with the Columbarium idea is to be consistent with, you know, what's described here, to use the Columbarium area as a start toward kind of having that garden type atmosphere.
Good.
I'm not
Thank
saying
you.
what I want to say as well as I'd like to, but I think you know what I mean.
No, I understand. Justine, you can go. I think it's, unless anybody's interested in that further, we can take it down so we can see each other better. Thank you, Justine. Other thoughts about my idea?
So sorry, Paul, are you talking about coming up with a development plan
No,
for woods?
what I wanted to do is just to put it, you know, there are 50 different things in the master plan, or maybe more than that. And we only address 3 or 4 at a time. But they're in the master plan so that if we want to, annually, we're supposed to, we hope to review it. At some point, it's there to remind us that, hey, let's keep that in mind. Let's not forget about that. And why I want to put that is because I didn't even know that there was such a plan until some citizen brought it up, and then Tish responded and said, hey, there was a plan that was, you know, ready to go. It was well developed, but for one reason or another, it was shelved. So what I wanted to do was sort of unshelve it. Not that we're going to use it, because half of the territory has already been used, but so that it as a kind of reference point, inspiration, prompt for future development of those back acres.
Could you make it an appendix then to the master plan report?
You certainly could. What I was hoping to, section 6.4 would be very brief, 2 little paragraphs, but in the master plan document itself, I think we already have some appendices. I think, didn't we? I can't remember. Andrea, were there some appendices in the master plan?
I feel like there were, but that wasn't one of them. I think it would be great to add. I love that plan. It's beautiful. And if we could get any inspiration from it for future development, I think that would be great.
Good. Well, thank you for that encouraging word, Andrea. Yeah, so I guess what I would say is we could send you in the next packet this language, or send it, I could send it out to you sooner. And if you want to correct it, fool around with it, change it, but something to this effect, I would like to insert, I mean, that's my wish, into the master plan as 6.4, which would be the last point for the new cemetery.
Yeah, I think that would be, we should do that. I'll do that if you send it to me.
Oh, great, Andrew. Thank you. What about the rest of the committee? Any thoughts, yay or nay, or added comments? Go ahead, Andrea, and I'll send it to you, and if you want to tinker around with the language, feel free and send it around to everybody. And thank you very much. Okay. Let's see here. Committee comments. Last thoughts for today. I wanted to again welcome Rod Rydell and Rebecca Purcell. Thank you very much for coming. You may all know that Andrea and I have been on this committee for 7 years, and it's been fun. But, you know, there's something called term limits, and we are not immune to them. So Andrea and I are going to, I think the June meeting will be our last meeting. And the cemetery committee calls for 5 members. I mean, the rules, the charge and so on calls for 5 members. So it just so happens that Rod and Rebecca have come to the committee for such a time as this. And we can tell you, I mean, there's a few hoops you have to jump through with the town manager and all that sort of thing. But we can tell you about that. We still, it's not yet, hold on, because we still have 1 more month here. And I think that Aaron is probably going to be, sometimes we don't meet in July, But I think that even though if we can't meet the first, we'll talk about this next time. If we can't meet the first Wednesday, maybe the second Wednesday, because at that point, Andrea and I will no longer be on the committee, but the committee will need to have an election and elect a new chair and a new vice chair. And there'll be 5 of you, and you will do that. And then you'll have to break Aaron in again. That was a joke, Aaron. So, any other thoughts? Okay, so the quick thing, next time I want to have a review of the website so everybody can see what's on there and you can find your way around it. We can look at everything that's been put up there. We'll also, Brian will have some 3 kinds of language suggested perhaps for our signs. And we'll talk a little bit about 6.6.4 of the master plan that Andrew's going to fiddle around with. And is there any other thing that we need that we have to sum up for next time? I'm not sure.
I'll reach out to the bicycle committee. I don't know if they're going to be meeting.
Okay. Brian's report on bike committee. I don't know if you saw it, but Kevin Podzik sent me pictures of the plantings that they've done, including the Hanley Memorial. I sent it out to you all. It looks very nice. And I wrote him back telling him we were so grateful. We really appreciate how the friends help beautify the cemetery. I also want to again salute Aaron because he's had his hands full dealing with the overworking beavers. You know, my wife told me that what they do is if a beaver hears running water, he can't sit still. He has to do something to stop it. And so look what they did. They caused a colossal mess for Aaron and his colleagues. All right. So do I have are there any public comments?
Yeah. Feliz Cinco de Mayo.
Yes. Muchísimas gracias, hermano. Okay. So do I have a motion to adjourn? Oh, Susan, thank you for joining us today.
It's always a pleasure to be at these meetings. Thank you all for all that you do.
It's a pity that we don't have, you know, I hope before too long the cemetery committee can be meeting live again. It's a lot more fun.
It is.
This is
I agree.
the best is not too bad. Yeah. Good to see you, Susan. And Justine,
Likewise.
thank you for all that you do in the background and make it work.
Absolutely, no problem.
And it's nice to see that Tish lives somewhere besides at the cemetery office.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
But Aaron does not live on Monument Street. I just want to point that out to everybody. No, sometimes I think he thinks he does. Lately. All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yes, I motion we adjourn the meeting.
Leo motions we adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second,
All right. If you raise your hand, if everybody agrees.
second.
Okay. It's been seconded by Leo. It's a what do you call it? Unanimous. Hard to say anonymous. We'll see you all in June, God willing, and the creek don't rise.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.